Reapers 13, Chapter 4, Rhys. Hope is strongest when the night is darkest. It's like a white drop on a pure black canvas. I've never seen a live elephant before, so large, powerful, and only a tad bit scary in their majestic demeanor. I took a quick mental note as it passed by the train window. There were so many majestic sights grazing by in the blink of an eye like shooting stars. Gazelles frolicked by the riverside, taking a quick drink of water to refresh their weary bodies after a long day of running freely under the open sky. A pride of lions rested lazily around the savannah, exerting their dominance by presence alone. Rhinos charged fervently in a stampede across limitless fields of green. All of it, a framework of nature, unhampered and unperturbed, lay just beyond the boundary of a little glass divider. Oh, how I longed to be amongst such beautiful creatures, soaking in their wisdom and grace. But my mission forced me along a different path, in a steel carriage, shooting towards a city made of even more steel. Long gone were the days of the ancient texts where buildings were crafted from purely earthen materials such as clay and stone. Societies have progressed beyond our connection with nature to a point we might entirely forget we ever came from it. And if we forget about nature, we may forget to appreciate the beauty in its simple, chaotic order. Mart intended for us to bask in its glory, yet the few hours I've been here, I've already seen a city completely changed beyond its original form. I slumped back in my seat, taking out a notepad and an ink pen to try and scribble some of the sights by memory. Even though it would serve as a pale imitation, if I ever made it back home, I thought they might be nice to show to my friends. Focus became me for the next several minutes as I furiously scribbled down some of the animals. Only a slight movement from my companion in front of me brought me to attention, and in that instant, I froze. A gun stared right at me. On instinct, I stuck my hands up and yelped, "Don't shoot!" Cassandra's eyes were closed, but the expression on her face was writhing with anger and sadness. Some nightmare had sunken its fangs into her sleep, and as a response, the woman sought to shoot it away. "Cassandra?" I asked. Her eyes snapped open. Recognition spread across her face. "Rhys?" she said, still slightly in a daze. "We're on the same team, remember?" I blurted out stupidly. Of course the woman who saved my life is also an ally. Cassandra holstered her gun. "Sorry," she mumbled. "Have we arrived?" "Not yet," I said. "The man in the pipe said it was the next stop." She gave me a look of utter confusion, like I was speaking in another language, but I studied Entian well enough to speak it as though I were born. "They're called conductors," she said. "Like during a concert?" I asked. Cassandra rolled her eyes and sighed. "So what's this all about?" she asked, rudely ignoring my question. "What do you mean? Why is the council taking such an interest in you? I know you're a member of the church, but they sent a Reaper, an Azaean mage, and cultists nearby armed with a giant pet, and one of those things would be normal enough, but three at the same time is considerable overkill." I could think of a few reasons, one of which being the idol in my satchel, but that was not something I should be sharing with the class. I'm not sure," I lied, "although I think they might be upset with me due to some of the events back home." Cassandra leaned back in her seat. "I don't keep up much with the news. I think I might have read about some embassy, but that's it. Am I close?" "I suppose it's in the right area," I smiled, but she didn't seem to respond much to warmth. "A great gate opened and the church closed it. That's the short of it, at least." "You closed a gate?" She seemed so shocked. "It has always been the church's duty to close gateways, even the great ones." "Does that suffice as a good enough reason?" I asked. Cassandra leaned in close, gazing at me with such owned eyes I felt pricked by some unseen blade. The tip of her gaze felt as though it were peering into my very mind, and by the end of it, she scowled. "Maybe you can tell me a few things," I said, trying to change the subject. "You're holding back," she blurted out. Sweat beads formed in the temple of my skull for being so quickly called out. I thought I was being clever. "Why ever would you say that?" I asked, trying to muster up a confident voice. She sighed, suddenly uninterested with her line of questioning. "What is it you want to know?" and for a brief moment I think I caught a glance of her eyes darting to the empty seat on my right. Why do the people here seem so upset? I asked. Have they truly all turned away from Mard's light? What you really mean to ask is, why don't people treat you with the same respect as they did back home? Why are people trying to kill you? That was a more direct question, but essentially the same. I nodded. They hate you because they believe that the church is the reason for the way the world is. Blasphemy! That's simply not true, I nearly shouted. The church protects the world from, well, everything otherworldly. Truth is subjective. Her words were cold and unforgiving. There is no room for doubt when it comes to the church's intentions. To even suggest our divine purpose could be misconstrued broke my heart. How much do you know of the church's history? She asked. Do they teach the history of 100 or so years past? They taught enough, I said. The church, established since ancient times, discovered a plot to unleash the evils of the Great Gates. We fought, nearly lost, and escaped overseas to Marinus. Our guardian angel protected and guided us. Cassandra burst into laughter. Gleeful, cruel laughter. Once again, I caught her eyes glimpsing to some sight unseen to my right. The church paints the history with just as many colors as the council, she said. Are you insinuating that I'm lying? I asked, truly trying to understand this woman before me, both savior and danger. Were my instincts wrong? As I said before, truth is subjective. Somewhere between the lies you tell and the lies you hear is where you find absolute truth. And even if you manage to find that truth, most avert their gaze and see it as another lie, a drop in the sea of them. She laughed again. I do not insinuate that you lie, but merely see the crack in your truths. Does that suffice as a good enough answer? To sling my own words against me. Clearly this woman was not pleased with the half-truth I told her earlier. I grew quiet, matching her disposition. I had many more questions, but she gave off such an antagonistic aura, I felt I'd be better served keeping them to myself. Where do you go from here? Cassandra asked me after a long moment of silence. Should I tell her the truth? She saved my life, but everyone has their own reasons for what they do. My mission was far too important to jeopardize by revealing too many secrets at once. If it makes you feel better, the council will want my head as well. Like it or not, we're in this together. That was a good point, and it did ease some of my worries, as though she could read my mind. Besides, I needed directions from a local, though the paleness of her skin said maybe she wasn't as local as I'd like. I'm going to the ancestral home of the church, I said. I'm going to the Temple of Mard. For once, a different expression shone on Cassandra's face, one of intrigue rather than anger or indifference. There's nothing there, she said. The only thing you might find by going there are blood and ghosts. Now arriving at Ebbington, came the voice in the pipes. Ebbington. The light screeching noise followed by the jerk of motion indicated the train was coming to a stop. So you know the place? I asked. Maybe she was a local. I was told by my superior to seek out the temple, I said, and I knew there was something worth seeing since he gave me that key as well. The train came to a stop. Cassandra rose abruptly and grabbed me by the arm, like a child about to be scolded. Come on, she commanded. I was lifted and quickly brought out like a bag of stolen goods, scurried away by a thief in the night. Keep your head down and do your best to avoid any eye contact with those creatures, she said halfway through the station. I saw what she was referring to. A group of men with suits wandered the platform. However, it wasn't the fact that they were a group of men that I found strange, but rather their heads. Where a normal human head resided, instead sat what looked to be a fleshy sack of eggs. Stranger still, as I looked, a shape began to slowly form, then harden into a circle, followed by another, darker circle within. A giant yellowing eyeball with an orange iris. It mesmerized me until I felt a whack to the back of my head. Ow! I blurted out. What did I just say? She snapped. Look at that thing for too long and it begins to feel your presence. Then it stares back at you, which offers surveillance to the council. It's best to ignore it. I darted one more glance as we passed through the exit turnstiles, trying my best not to bump into too many people. The eyeball I had seen returned to being blank. There was nothing like that in our books on otherworldly creatures, I murmured to myself. Somehow, Cassandra heard, "The books you have are probably greatly outdated. It'd do you well to assume you know nothing because you truly don't know anything." What a presumptuous statement. I knew most of what I needed to know, but saying so might invite some angry retort, so I kept my mouth shut as Cassandra dragged me out of the train station to a city covered in steam. I wanted to stop, but Cassandra's iron grip dragged me along so fast. "I'm not a child, you know," I protested, wresting my arm free. "This is all so new to me. Just give me a moment to take it in." "Take it in elsewhere," she grumbled. "We have to move. Those clothes need to go, and we only have so much time before the sun sets." She marched forward into the city. I followed, making sure to air my frustrations with a pointed sigh. "Since we're on the subject of changing clothes, would it not be wise for you to change your outfit? That coat, while very stylish, is also very unique." At a glance, this coat doesn't stand out nearly as much as a priestess walking around. Already I was reminded how lost these people were. As we walked the streets, I caught glimpses of people's disgusted looks. I really did stand out in my garb, which I wore so fondly only a little while ago back home. "Just like me, you'll be receiving all the warmth and hospitality this nation can give." That was an odd statement. Did she mean now that this council was after her, people would know somehow as though everyone were connected in some large mental spiderweb? Or was there a simpler answer? Curiosity often got the better of me, and my mouth, but I would not apologize for my nature. "Why would you receive any adverse treatment?" I asked. The question received no answer. "Cassandra?" I prodded. She sighed, almost in a mocking way of me from earlier. "For those in the know, my coat is a symbol normal people would try to disassociate themselves with." She said nothing else on the matter. I suppose nothing else needed saying. "Now keep quiet while I think about a way to get us to your temple." I proudly held my head up. "I will not be silent if I have a question," I declared. "Then do as you like," she snapped. I smiled, feeling satisfied with myself, and followed along. Cassandra brought me to a crowded street full of stores with all varieties of things to buy, from clothes to books, from jewelry to food. The streets had it all. "Welcome to South Ebb Street," she said. "Ebb Street?" "Like ebb and flow," she explained. "The central street that leads from the top of the city to the south is Flow Street, and along the way you run into shopping streets called Ebb Street. 4 for each cardinal direction. In between those streets are the residential areas divided by wealth, and at the center of it all lies the mayor's office." "Wow, you're very knowledgeable." Phew. I felt relieved to know that she, at the very least, lived in the area long enough to know a good bit of the locations. "I come here a lot," she quickly blurted out. Did I detect a hint of embarrassment? I kept my giggle inward so as not to invoke any wrath. "This is the city where I store all my weapons. I'll show you in a minute, but for now, we need to find you some better clothes to wear. You only get 1 pair because we can't carry too much." We perused the stores and shopped every window in search of something I felt comfortable with, but nothing really satisfied me. Either the style was too rigid or they were far too uncomfortable to wear, like hoop skirts. How was I supposed to fight with a giant hoop around my waist? Cassandra seemed to hate the whole process, muttering under her breath at each and every one of my protests, but just when I was about to give in, I finally spotted something. "I found it!" I yelped, far too excited to hold back. My finger was pointing to a street vendor next to a newsstand as I bounced up and down. I noticed the hint of frustration showing on Cassandra's brow and darted off through the crowds before she could say anything. "Wait for me," Cassandra called from behind. By the time she caught up, I already had everything in hand: bloomers, a short skirt, a cotton shirt, and vest. My only issue was my wallet, hiding somewhere in my pants. "Do you have the right currency?" Cassandra asked. "Do they take marks here?" "Crons only," yelled the shopkeeper from behind the counter. "Oh, well, I suppose they don't. I giggled to lighten the mood, but Cassandra seemed unamused. She sighed and rolled her eyes. How much? The vendor gave her a cold look before spitting on the ground. I'll give it to you for 80 crowns. Cassandra herself spat on the ground. 80 crowns for clothes no one else will buy? You're not selling dresses of the finest silks. You're just selling clothes that no one wants because you can get them for cheap and turn a profit. Take it or leave it, he snapped. 30 crowns is all I give you. Then no deal. That was unfortunate. I really did like the outfit, but before I had a chance to put them back, Cassandra quickly took hold of my chosen clothes and in a snap second, unholstered her revolver underneath the clothing. Then, she leaned in right up to the vendor's face and poked the barrel of the gun from underneath, just enough for him to see. This can go one of two ways, she whispered to keep the other customers from hearing. Option 1, you give us the clothes for 30 crowns, or option 2, I shoot you dead here in the streets and take the clothes. Fear lit his eyes up like the sun. I'll call the you'll be dead before you utter a word, she threatened. You've heard the stories about the church, haven't you? The man nodded his head very quickly. It's not that important, I tried to interject. Cassandra shushed me. Then you know we could kill you and get away with it. The man froze in fear. He looked into her eyes, and I know he saw what I saw. Death. With a smile, she dropped the 30 crowns and we took off. The paralytic fear she instilled in him with nothing but a glance frightened me. What sort of woman was I deciding to work with? I didn't even know how to broach the topic, but once we were straight away, I had to ask, would you really have killed him? Not him, but sometimes. She seemed to be wrestling with herself, glancing at something upwards. Mard might be trying to give her an answer. Sometimes people deserve it, she finally said. After you've seen enough people, you realize that not everyone should live. That's not something I can get behind, I said. Everyone deserves a second chance, or even a chance at redemption. Murder goes against the ways of Mard. He gave life to everything and everyone. It is wrong to destroy his creations. Maybe in a perfect world, but even then, how many people are willing to change? Most people would rather stay set in their ways, even if those ways are killing them. She spoke from experience. I was sure of it. We walked in silence from then on. I was led through more crowded streets until the sun got low and darkness began overtaking the land. Eventually, we found ourselves in a storage facility. Cassandra stood in front of the barred window of the counter, tapping her fingers impatiently while I paced around the room. Night had fallen, and we had neither room to stay in nor her weapons, which she insisted were necessary. The young man behind the counter was occupied, rummaging through drawers for the correct keys. After entering from the back of the building using the undesirables entrance, Cassandra gave him the proper papers and waited for the man to show her to the storage room, but the man was taking his sweet time. Is there a problem, sir? She asked. No problem at all, he replied through the bars. It seemed your key was misplaced by whomever worked before me. Aha, but I think I just found it. He produced a small silver key and held it up. Come with me, Miss Ruenbach. The man unlocked a door to the side of the counter and took us down a hallway full of storage units. After a short walk, eventually we stood before a locked door with the name Cassandra Ruenbach inscribed on the nameplate. The key slid snugly into the door and unlocked it without any resistance. Take your time, and when you're done, lock the door behind you. He handed the key to Cassandra and left. The room was small and stuffy, containing treasures of a past long gone, tools for the future, and one small gaslight to brighten the chamber. Runic inscriptions of protection and silvery paint shone faintly on the walls. On one wall, rifles and revolvers hung like trophies. On the opposite wall, clothing and coats were hung very neatly and all dressed up like a uniform. The ground held lockboxes, statuettes, golden jewelry, and a box full of a surprising amount of calling cards. Did you have many suitors? I asked. Cassandra ignored my question and moved to the wall of guns. For a moment, she just stared at them, absorbing their essence. Each was different and unique. This was definitely a woman accustomed to battle. After a deep thought, she pulled the Snyder Enfield rifle off the wall and handed it to me. "Do you know how to use that?" she asked. "I'm more of a revolver gal," I smiled. "Take it anyway." Cassandra rummaged around the storage and found a lockbox, which she opened with a separate key in her coin purse. Inside, she pulled out several bills with faces of the council members on them. Before she closed it, I caught a glimpse of dog tags. "These are all my emergency funds," she began, but I stopped listening. Instead, I was looking at the coats hung on the wall. "Would you mind terribly if I took one of your coats? They're very stylish." Each was black but came with unique trims and shapes. "They wouldn't fit you," she replied, seeing as she was taller than me. That's exactly what I liked about one coat in particular. "Speaking of clothing, you should change here and leave your robes behind." I snapped back to attention. "That's a no-can-do. These are my sacred robes." "And now they'll be safely guarded in a vault. While you're at it, fashion yourself with a dagger and grab a couple of those ammo boxes." I obediently gathered the items to one area, grumbling all the while like my new friend. "Get dressed." Cassandra left the room, leaving me to change clothes. But with such an opportunity, I looked around some more. The lockbox was a non-starter, since she took the key with her, but some of the other boxes held some interesting finds. One in particular held newspaper clippings of strange sightings. A line of ink struck across the entire page, marked many of the clippings, while others were left untouched. Another box held medals of valor. Impressive. She looked too young to have seen war, but it might explain all of the grumpiness. I was completely unfamiliar with any history outside of Maru's, but I assumed, given the state of the world, many wars were fought in the aftermath of the church's fall. And now I was taking too much time. I stripped my clothes quickly and switched into my new ones, but something was missing. The wall of coats called to me, knowing my thoughts. Happily, I grabbed a coat that seemed more on the petite side, just right for my body. It fit better than expected, and the length fell to my calves just like I wanted. The only problem was the sleeves. Cassandra took issue with much, but I doubt she cared for the jacket. Using my dagger, I made a slight modification and chopped off the sleeves so that my tattoo on my right forearm would show. My arms needed to breathe anyway. No one enjoyed having their skin so restricted. I was about to leave when I saw one more thing of interest. A journal lay on a bundle of clothes sloppily tossed in a corner of the room. Time was short, but it too called to me, pulling me in like a magnet. I just had to stuff it in my satchel before finding my church robes and lying them neatly where the journal had been. I closed the latch on the storage door before leaving. Cassandra waited in the alleyway behind the building, where we entered, still smelling strong of urine. Something put her on edge. Her revolver was in her hand and eyes scanning the darkness from the obscured lanterns. "Sorry that took so long," I said. "Why does it seem so quiet?" "People are in their homes," she said without looking at me. "Curfew starts soon. We should..." Her sentence cut short. I was pushed aside, dodging something. Cassandra flinched back, her shoulder the source of the motion, clearly pierced by something. She uttered a curse. "Take the main road out of the city and go west to a bridge overlooking a river." She dodged another invisible object from somewhere. "When you reach the river, follow it upstream to a farm. I'll find you there." "But..." I began to protest. "Go," Cassandra commanded. "If you find a horse, grab it." Biting my lip, I obeyed. Clearly danger found us, and I was its target, so I shamefully ran towards the end of the alleyway, opposite to where Cassandra was facing. But once there, I had to peek just to help me understand. The assailant stood where Cassandra glanced at earlier, making herself known. She wore the same coat as Cassandra, and the other gentleman when I thought about it, a cowl over her head and a theater mask worn during comedic plays. The assailant jumped off the roof of the building with the grace of a cat and seemed to swing through the air from an invisible wire on a nearby lamppost, blocking off the other exit of the alleyway. "You chose not to run?" she asked in a cold voice devoid of any emotion. "I know how you operate," Cassandra replied. I left after that. Cassandra was stalling, and I didn't want it to be in vain. I ran along the streets of the city looking for a carriage. It felt wrong to steal, but times were tough, Instead of a carriage, I spotted a horse locked in a stable beside the building. I invoke the 22nd name, Zahari, I whispered. A glyph appeared in the air before me. I reached in and pulled out the flaming sword of a warrior and used it to cut through the paddock. The horse whinnied, slightly fearful of me, but I quickly put my hands up, allowing the blade to fall down and turn to ashes. Calm now, calm, I whispered. It responded to me, a mirror of my own emotions. I only needed to approach it with respect and kindness before I was able to leap on its back and take off. I hoped Cassandra was alright, but I needed to focus now. Worrying did no one any good. By the grace of Mard, I yelped. A giant centipede-like creature with pincers and glowing red eyes traveled around the buildings, writhing and twisting further into the city. I would hate to be in that thing's path.